Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Draw He-Man episode 3. And so this time I think we're going to finally wrap him up. I'm excited to see how this all turns out. So come along for the journey. If you're working on something creative, good luck. And remember to save often. Now before we jump into this, I did want to share something kind of cool I got in the mail. It is unrelated to He-Man, but related to art. So I thought, well, I'll just kind of show this off real quick here. So this is a book, an art book of the work of George Barbier, who is a fashion illustrator and graphic designer from the late 1800s and early 1900s, and is known as an Art Deco artist. And so if you're familiar with that sort of art style, that'll definitely give you a hint of what you'd be looking at, looking over his work. But just a quick excerpt from the front of the book here. It says, George Barbier, 1882 to 1932, was a leading Art Deco artist who made significant contributions in at least 3 fields: book illustrations, fashion illustrations, and theatrical design. So I picked this up because, first of all, it's a beautiful book. I mean, this has got, like, I don't know if you can tell, but it's got like a metallic blue printing for some of the ink against a sort of a off like pink. I don't know, it's just a really striking book. But of course the art in the inside is also equally amazing. And for me, this kind of stuff gives me ideas about composition. It's very graphically powerful. There's some really great use of flat colors and textiles. Yeah, and it's just sort of refreshing to see things that are not fully rendered that are, you know, equally compelling and powerful. And so a lot of his work featured female types. I'm going to be careful not to show some of the more provocative images here on the stream, but yeah, if you guys are interested in this kind of stuff, I would say definitely check out the works of George Barbier. Okay, with that being shared, let's go ahead and jump into He-Man. And so we left off here with a lot of this white hatching put in place. I think it feels a little bit rigid right now. I think as we're just very mechanical, right, about going through and you know, meticulously carving out each shape. And when you do this in layers and in stages like this, a piece can start to kind of stiffen up, versus if we were to try to do this in one fell swoop, we might get a little more energy, there might be a little more gesture and action, and I don't want to lose a sense of that just because of our process. So as we start to kind of finalize, I'm going to try to like maybe infuse a little bit of that back in here. At least that's my goal. We'll see if we can do that or not. So if you have a process where you feel like you've got 7 or 8 stages that kind of get mechanical, you know, pay attention to that in the final stages. Are you losing some of that energy? Are things getting a little too tight, a little too stiff? And can you, in your final pass, bring a little bit of that energy back into the work? So try to come at it with a fresh set of eyes, take a little break from it, come back and then assess it. And that's, I think, one of the things that's kind of cool about what we've been doing together on the stream is we do a little bit of work on a piece, then we come back the following week and we all have a fresh set of eyes on it, and we can sort of tweak and modify as well as, you know, progress to the next step. So I want to have that in mind. But I think one of the things we need to address is that we still have not really dropped this background to full black yet. It's still dark gray in an effort to try and see those shapes that we defined. So what I might do now is bring in some rim lighting to carve out any of the black areas that are going to get completely lost when we drop the background to full black. Hopefully that makes sense. I think when you see it happen, it'll be obvious. Hey, Zenzane, welcome in. Hope you're doing good. You got anything cool going on? Any cool projects? So here we go. If you see, I drop that background to black, and then we lose a lot of that stuff. So before we do that, let's bring in another layer of white that will specifically caps lock off Sometimes I wish I could just disable my caps lock key. Actually, I'm going to shift this eye a little bit. It's kind of bugging me. There we go. And we'll tinker with that too, because I feel like it still might be too fussy in that area, some of the shading. But yeah, I want to kind of come in here and hit some of this stuff. It's going to get totally lost. You're doing a study of a Subaru WRX. Oh, cool. That's a fun car. Got some nice classic sort of 90s Japanese auto designs going on with that one. That's sweet. Okay, so let's see. Do we want to... I'm going to see how much I might want to define of this far side of his body here. And as we go, I might continue to tinker with the entire image. Because, yeah, why not, right? I guess I should just check to make sure too. Okay, yeah, my microphone is at a good level, hopefully. Obviously, you guys let me know if something's sounding a little bit off. Yeah, you're enjoying looking at the car stuff. Yeah, I think that's cool subject matter, and obviously, like doing more kind of mechanical stuff can really help you work on your perspective and your draftsmanship. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. Okay, rim light on the top of the shield here. In fact, it probably could just hit the whole top there. One of the things you want to be careful about when you're doing rim lighting is you don't want to make it just an outline on the forms. It's a really common thing I see newer artists struggle with is making simple outlines for the rim light, and it needs to be thought of as a light that's in the scene physically with an object that has dimension. And it's just very rare for you to see a rim light that creates just an outline. It is going to have variation. It's going to carve in and out of the forms. You know, there's going to be rounded surfaces, sharp surfaces. It behaves and reacts to the light the same way any other surface would. So yeah, don't let that trip you up. Now, of course, you might be doing a style that warrants having a light treated in such a way, but you want to make sure that's a very like deliberate decision on your part. So if we take this down to, actually, I'm going to just make a new layer that's black so we can easily just turn it on and off. Whoops, I'm losing my, there we go. Sometimes I need to, there's certain keys on my keyboard that I accidentally hit sometimes that I really should just disable them. They're not helpful. Okay, so that's from dark gray to black. So this, I think, is a good layer for us to be able to toggle because it will remind us of what shapes we're going to be losing. And so maybe we get a little bit of his belt showing here. I think I mentioned before, but my favorite parts of an image are the very, very beginning when you're brainstorming ideas and you're really loose and you're just kind of playing around with stuff and you don't feel attached to anything. And then I like the phase right before the final polish, and I feel like we're in that phase. So I'm really liking this phase here. It's kind of where things start to really gel together, and you start to see what it can become. You start to see its true potential. You might be wondering, well, why don't you like the very end? Because some of that stuff is kind of technical, like resolution and sharpness and some of the kind of post processing stuff that I think you kind of always want to explore that stuff just to make sure that you're not leaving some helpful edit on the table. But there's not a lot of like painting, drawing, artistry in that very final step. So I sort of don't that one isn't in my favorites category. I like the stages where I'm still able to be, an artist in a more traditional sense. Okay, and then we can explore things like some bounce lighting as well. That I want to make sure that it's not too strong because it should live in a separate value group from our lit forms, but it will allow us to see these shapes and not lose them completely into the background, and that might be good. I'm not afraid to lose some things completely into the background, and we may put this stuff in and we may think, oh, actually when we turn that background black, we didn't need all that in there. That's a possibility. But I like knowing that I have some kind of tool or device, just visually justifiable thing that I can do to help us see some of this stuff. And it's good to remember too that the ground plane is a reflector. So unless your ground plane is made of Vanta black, which is that like uber dark non-reflective black paint, right? Like there's going to be some light bouncing up off the ground and other surfaces. And so there's usually justification to have some kind of reflected light back up. And you can kind of determine how hardcore you want to go with that, of course, but there's usually some reason to have that in there. And when you're talking about details within the character, well, I mean, the surfaces of the character matter. Like, imagine if He-Man's, chest armor here was made of like super polished chrome, almost mirror-like. Well, then there'd be a really high chance that light hitting that would be bouncing and reflecting a lot of light up, like under his chin, right? Like maybe on the inside of his arm. So, you have to think about those things as well. Don't let it overwhelm you, but it wants to certainly be a factor. Guess we'll throw a rim light up on the top of that gem there. And with the placement of some of these things, you also have to remember that the audience they have a sense for what will look right, but they're not going to be like they're not going to be a computer, right? They can't like mathematically determine if the light rays are accurate or not, right? It just has to feel right to them. And a lot of times things feeling right are just things feeling like they have form. So, you can kind of fudge some of this stuff a little bit, in the interest of making forms understandable and readable. And if you look at great paintings, sometimes you'll get in there and you'll try to kind of math out exactly what's going on. And it's like, yeah, you know what? This is probably a little bit off, but man, I really like that they did that anyway, because it helps me understand the shape being in front of that shape or whatever else. And that's where artists can be better than cameras, right? We can kind of tweak things selectively. We can think about not just what's in front of us, but also how the brain of the viewer is going to interpret what we're making. Okay, let's give a little bit of light on top of this tail here. Oh, thanks. Yeah, you're liking the rim lighting? Cool, cool. Good to hear. Yeah, again, I think when we drop that to black, I think we're going to really want to see some of those forms. Now, I'm actually questioning this choice here. That feels distracting, so I think we'll kill that. And we might pull some of this back a little bit here. It feels a little strong. His abs are a little bit extra. I might even have reason to pull back the light a little bit on this inner thigh area. I'd be curious to like summon Gustav Doré from the grave and like interview him about his epic, uh, etchings, and just see if I'm sure he could be dropping some crazy knowledge on us right now about ways to think about some of these things. I mean, a lot of it probably dictated though by his use of traditional mediums. He would see what we were doing here in Photoshop, and he would be probably, uh, you know, impressed and also maybe a little bit, well, impressed by the software and maybe a little less impressed by us, the artists. But I'd still love to talk to that guy, man. He has, I'm sure, a bucket load of knowledge on thinking about things in this way. I'm kind of curious if, like, this shield I don't think has to be quite as loud with that rim light up on the top there. I don't know that we need to be so in your face about this thing. Like, the eye is going to fill in that shape quite easily with just a few little hits. And it's essentially the same concept as like a lost edge, right? Like you don't spoon feed the viewer with the entire line. You tell them where it starts, you tell them where it ends, and you let them fill in the gaps. And that can be a lot more powerful a statement. And with images like this, where we have these big, strong light and shadow shapes, we're like constantly playing with that, right? We're constantly playing with this idea of, can we lose an edge, and then can we help you find it again later? And how bold can we be about that? And if you look at artists that do this stuff, that are wizards at this stuff, I mean, they really show you how crazy you can get with just like missing information. Like, you just need a little hit, and that might be enough. Like, let's say we just pull all this back here a lot, and then we put a rim light in up here. And it's like, yeah, that's probably cooler, right, than just like spelling out the front side completely. So yeah, it's a fun puzzle to solve. And it's about like min-maxing too, right? Like we're kind of min-maxing things. What's nice now at this point is you'll see that we're sort of okay looking at this image without the dark gray background if we don't want to. However, Castle Grayskull is going to come into the background and will be a dark gray. So that'll be a little bit of a help, seeing some of the shapes too that we may be missing completely. But I want the image to read okay without relying on Castle Grayskull. Like if it's good without it, then with it, it might hopefully just look better. That is the hope anyway. Okay, let's see. Now, I thought this shape here was just a little distracting when I opened the image up again, so I think I'm going to kind of break this one up a little bit more. We got to make a choice about some of the inner shapes here. Okay, that feels like that's just a little bit less distracting. When I said distracting, I was thinking about, who is it? Christian Bale yelling at the lights guy on the set. It's effing distracting. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? Thinking, can we maybe lose some of these shapes? Like, could we maybe lose this whole shape? Oh, okay. There's something pretty spicy about that. Let's lean into that. Hmm. Okay. Yep. Yep. There's something kind of cool about that. Now we could still like give a little bit of form to it, just ever so slight hinting, a whisper, or as Bob Ross would say, two hairs and some air. Thanks, Bob. Okay, let's get some rim light, or sorry, some bounce light, some reflected light up underneath the battle cat here. You know, all those phrases Bob Ross had, they're like, witty and fun, but they're also helpful from an instructional standpoint, right? Because you remember them. They're like little mnemonic devices. And as my time as a teacher, I've sort of come to really appreciate when you can think of a phrase or something that people can remember easily. It's an art form in and of itself to be good at coming up with that kind of stuff. I mean, funny enough, that's kind of like what marketing people do too, right? They're like, can we think of a phrase that everyone will have stuck in their brain, or like a person who makes jingles, right, for products and stuff. They want you to have that song stuck in your head, the words or whatever it is. So if you're trying to teach somebody something, it's a similar kind of thing, right? You want to plant a seed of knowledge in somebody's brain, and you want it to kind of stick there until it grows and becomes super, super strong. All right, let's bring the black back in there, and now we can really see how strong some of these ideas are. Battle Cat, you forgot to powder your nose, buddy. Blinding us over here. No, it's his armor. We can't really blame him. Let's see. What's the shape of this guy over here? Okay, cool. So yeah, let's see if we can bring in just a little bit of that shape. And what about the legs back here? I feel like maybe we lost a little bit of those. Just want little hints. Okay, that's cool. All right, I think that's working pretty good. To maybe thicken up this strap a bit here. I guess technically we could have a cast shadow off of this down onto the shield there. All right. I think I just want more light hitting this belt in general. So let's boost it up. Carve out that shadow. All right, and then we can find an excuse to have a little bit of light hitting. Some of the ab forms there. Yeah, you know, his shield, I have to say, would have probably been better to have showing the front side than the back side, because I don't really know what the back side of his shield looks like. And, you know, I don't know that there's an opportunity to do anything really that cool with the inside of the shield. The outside has kind of a cool design, but just the pose that we went with, we kind of needed to show the shield from this angle. And if I were to add anything to the shield to try to make it obvious from this angle, I think it would change, it would warp the design too much from what it should be. So I think we'll have to leave it there. Yeah, it's not a big loss. It's just something that I was thinking about is, yeah, we could have had maybe some more fun detail had it been shown from the front, but I don't think it's like a deal breaker or anything. It's very hard to optimize an image for every single thing, right? Like, you want it to be dramatic, you want it to have some cool lighting, you want it to also like showcase the design in a certain way. It's like, boy, how do I do all those things? It's like, well, maybe you can't, right? Like, you may just not be able to do every one of those things to 100%. So just figure out which ones are your most important priorities and leverage those, or lean into those rather. make his mouth a little bit more open. Try to make him have like a really nice, intimidating war cry, war shout. I gotta figure out what we want to do with the sword exactly, the light hitting the sword, but I think we should probably have some lightning arcing off, right? That's going to be kind of cool. Maybe there's a little bit kind of arcing down here like so. Sometimes I like doing lightning that changes in thickness, but that tends to look very stylized. It's got a cool look to it, but I don't think it's appropriate here. I think we want to probably stay with a thinner strand of lightning. Yeah, it sounds like really, really nitpicky, but yeah, I don't know. As an artist, you kind of like get paid to be nitpicky about stuff. Especially if you're an art director, right? You're like the biggest art snob in the room. You are the czar of aesthetics. Hey Tom, how's it going, man? It's a much different time for you over there. But good morning on your end of the pond over there. I'm gonna just play with this Dutch angle a little bit. I want to see if we're still in a good territory with that, or if we can manage to like lean it a little bit more. I think we can just lean it a little. I'm going to lean it a little bit more. Like it's just a slight. Oh, yeah, it's like barely anything. I'm just going to leave it a little bit more back. Just add a slight bit more drama to it. And I don't want everything to be like, feeling very like parallel. It's just going to make it feel a little bit stiff. It's going really good, man. Feeling really nice about the fact that we're going to be wrapping this one up, this stream. And I will make sure we do, even if I have to go stay a little longer. We're going to make sure we wrap this one up. But I don't think we're going to need a lot of extra time. I did spend a few minutes talking about an art book earlier, so you can go rewatch the VOD if you want to see a little art book that I was suggesting. Pretty cool stuff. But yeah, I think we'll be able to wrap this up. So I'm just sort of assessing now, like, what's the next step? Because I actually feel like we're in a pretty decent spot with some of that stuff we were tinkering with there. And just glancing back over at Skeletor here to make sure that we kind of stay in the stylistic zone with this series. I think the next thing we can do is the posterized lighting, where we introduce some gray values in the lighting on the character. So let's try that, and the way that we do that is we fill a layer with black, we lower the opacity down, and then we erase with a soft eraser where we'd like your attention to be. So we want our attention to be, well, I mean, we're thinking about the light. That's what we're thinking about. But like the light has been positioned to get us to look where we want, right? So hopefully all those things are like synchronizing, right? Hopefully. So we can make the sword light up, and then we're making, his upper body light up here. Put a little bit more light over here. Okay, the battle cat's eyes are glowing, so we gotta consider those, but then we're also gonna have light from the sword hitting the top. So, you'll see that as we add this in, and you've hopefully seen this in the other images we've done, that when we add these gradients of light in, even though they'll get posterized later, um, it really helps us showcase the forms. Like it's almost cheating, right, to add these in. Uh, but our goal should be to get this image to read well without relying on this step. Because if it reads well without this step, then we know that when we bring this step in, it'll just be like, it'll really hit you good, right? And that's what we're hoping for. And that sort of like effort to make something work in each of its stages, I think, is a really good mentality. Like if you're doing an image and you've got a stage where you're like, okay, everything is loose, but I'm just thinking about composition, it's like, awesome. Then if the composition reads in that loose phase and you stick to that composition throughout, that's awesome, right? Like that, you locked it in early, and you've sort of solved that. You know that the piece works well from a compositional level. Then you do, like, I don't know, maybe like a line drawing on top to figure out the details. And it's like, well, if the line drawing is reading well, if there's nothing confusing about the line drawing, excellent, right? Like get that looking really solid. Now, you may be doing a piece where you're going to paint over the lines, or you're going to get rid of the lines. And then I would say maybe limit how much time you spend obsessing about the cleanliness of the lines. But, the lines should have, um, a lot of clarifying qualities to them. And, they should make sense, right? So just some stuff to think about. Try to make an image work at each stage, given what that stage is intended for. So here's like a total awesome use of this these halftones, is that we can make the foot feel like it's coming towards us versus the angle of the lower leg going a little bit away from us, right? Like that's completely being done by the fact that we have now these values to work with. The Gustave Dorés of the world would have been trying to do this through just like insanely intensive hatching and cross hatching, and weaving of those tones. So mad credit, right? We're sort of we're doing like a piece inspired by that look, but we're not being super genuine to their process. If you want another person, I think I mentioned before, Bernie Wrightson is another person you can go look at if you want to see somebody who was just very authentically trying to do very labor intensive, etching style works. It's just, it's mind blowing when you see what he accomplishes. Yeah, so like if you so like when I look at the OBS window, I see everything a lot smaller on my other monitor, and it's a really good way for me to see if it's working. And it's like, yep, that definitely is reading, like that light is coming off of that sword and hitting everything. If you're just in Photoshop and you want that without having OBS, just use the navigator window. It's there, I think, by default. It opens, and so if you weren't sure what the purpose is of that, it's just to be able to see your piece from far away without having to consistently zoom out on what you're working on. It's really, really nice. The other thing you can do, of course, in Photoshop is you can open a duplicate window of the image you're working on. You can just do that by going up to Window and then Arrange, and then at the bottom of that menu, it'll say new window for the name of whatever document you're working with, and it'll create a duplicate. And when you make changes in one, you'll see them in the other one. So that's another way for you to see your image in a different way. And you can even have one set to grayscale, so you can see a grayscale version of your piece while you're working in color, which is really cool. Okay, so now that we're okay with what's going on with this halftone pass, I guess that's what we could call it, then we're gonna go ahead and posterize this so that way we don't have, we don't want like super soft gradients going on. We want it to have some stepping so that it has a little bit of that etched quality to it. And to do that, I'll make a new layer set to white. Well, look how crappy that looks. that's our pass. But we'll make it, we'll make it black. We'll merge it with white, and then we'll duplicate this as a backup in case we posterize this and we don't like what's happened, because I have another alternate way that we can posterize if the range is not looking good. We'll set this to multiply. We'll turn the opacity back down to, I think it was like 60-something%. That looks right. And now we can run posterize, image adjust, posterize, levels at 4. So we can see it's kind of like crunching things a little bit. Let's go levels 5. Give it a little bit of extra help there to gradate. Cool, okay. Yep, I think that works. But if you want to know what the other method is, we'll probably use it at some point on one of these, but instead of posterizing, you can use a gradient map, and you can basically like create sections of the gradient map that force it to have these distinct regions of color. And what's nice about a gradient map is then you can position where you want certain values to live, whereas posterize is doing a sort of average across the value spectrum, which in this case worked out okay for us, but you might be doing it and it might not line up well. I actually think we struggled a little bit with that on Evil Lynn. If you guys remember when we did that, I felt like the value range could have probably been optimized a little bit, and the gradient map might have given us a slightly better result. So we might use that again in the future, but I think here this actually worked just fine for us. Now what we can do is we can introduce a local color. So this is our attempt to sort of break up the forms a little bit, suggest maybe skin versus outfit, this will have a little bit of that hue, that accent hue in it, very subtly. And that we're going to do with another multiply layer. And we'll just start with it being in gray, and then we'll give it a little bit of that tint. But now I have to think about what pieces we want to do. I think it makes sense to have this harness be a value darker. Like, I think we want to just basically try to go for all of the armor pieces. And I want to see how dark we want to go, because if we go dark, then it gives us the opportunity to do a little bit of specular highlighting, which, sorry for the blinding light there, which will be in line with how we've been doing the other images. So I'm going to try to go kind of dark with this. Except for I'm going to leave the rim light out because I still want that to be super bright. You don't really see that strap over there. We do see the belt. Although we may end up doing these gems as like the full accent color. In fact, I'm almost certain, and we'll probably do it with the cross too, but that's fine. We'll get there. That'll be the next step. Just one thing at a time. And not the rim light. Is that erasing fully? Okay, sure. Sure, buddy. Boots, maybe? I don't know. Let's see. It could be cool. Might not be. I think we're going to have to tint this a little bit red to know if this will be a good idea or not. So let's do that. Colorize. Now this is going to be way saturated down. Fully red. But there's our accent color coming in. Hey, Patrick, how's it going, man? Good to see ya. Just making some he dudes over here. Soaking in these choices. I think if we didn't have this slightly tinted, then I think I would have said no to the boots. But since we do have a little bit of that red coming in, I think it's working okay. Let's try it on the bracers as well. Actually, I need to extract that color again. So shield your eyes, incoming brightness. Okay, and we're back. I just assume at some point there'll be somebody trying to watch this in their bed while they're trying to sleep. And I do that with YouTube videos sometimes, and it's like, you know, oh my God, what is that crazy light? And it's like somebody, this monitor is like fully white or something, that they're working with something. Okay, so bracers, yeah, seems fine. Seems good. Axe, I guess, probably, yep. Let's just go for the axe too. Again, we're going to add specular highlights back in on this stuff. It's like a flashbang, exactly, yeah. It's like, oh, maybe it's a way to like wake up the audience. Like, hello, everybody's still awake out there, and you just toggle to the white screen. No, that's just rude. We don't want to do that. I'm gonna leave the blade itself white because of the little like lightning and energy styles going on. I remember we were making jokes about Skeletor being angry all the time, and now here we're making He-Man also looking quite angry. But I guess that's just the way it goes. Questioning the shield being also a tone. You know what? We can do it quickly, and we can undo it if we don't like it. So let's just pop it in there and see what happens. It will knock it back, and since it's not doing anything that visually interesting, maybe it is better that it's, yeah, that's the right call. Because the most important thing about this situation over here is his hand gripping the shield. The shield itself is not very interesting looking, so I don't actually mind that we knock it back. That might be all of the like subtle red accents that I want to do. And now we got to think about what are the real red accents. And so let's start with what's more obvious, which is, I think that there's those sort of like iconic. Oh, make sure this is on multiply. Iconic like emblems or whatever that he's got. So we'll make this red. Is it actually red? Where's my picture of He-Man? I got a picture of the classic He-Man over here somewhere. Yeah, that is red. Okay, good. I thought I remembered that right, but I figure I might as well check and make sure. And it's interesting. He actually has like some red accents here on his armor as well. So sure, let's do that. And I think I'm going to take some liberty here. I know there's probably some MOTU fanatic out there who's like, no, what are you doing? That can't be red. That's metal. I'm sorry. Oh, it's done. And then, yeah, I know, but we're gonna do it because I think it's just a nice way to move your eye through the piece. And then let's play with the brightness too, because it's really dark, and I think we want to be able to see that stuff a little bit better. There we go. Now, here comes an interesting thought. The Battle Cat's armor is red. It's all red. And it could be kind of interesting to just do that, to just go for it. It's gonna really draw your eye to the cat, though, so I'm concerned. I don't want him to steal the show, but it also could potentially create an interesting framing element. So it's digital. Let's try it. Let's see what it does, and we can change our mind if we don't like it. I think at the very least we'll go with the armor being the subtle accent red that we have, which is really more of a brown, right? It's like a red brown, but we can always kind of default to that, and then, you know, the red will just be like an initial experiment. How many characters am I planning to do for this IP? You're just wondering if it's going to be a longer series because you pretty much have all the characters covered I know about. Yeah, I think so. I'm not like super ultra knowledgeable about MOTU. I just know probably what you know, which is all of the main characters, and I think that's probably most people. So I think there's probably 2 or 3 more characters that are probably worth exploring in this universe, and then I think if we go beyond that, I think it's going to start to get really obscure. So, you know, I'm thinking we've got maybe 2 or 3 other characters to do from this universe, and I think we probably hit most of the main ones. But you know, if you're somebody out there who's watching this and you're like, man, I really wanted to do this certain character, drop a comment. You know, like, let me know, because I'm definitely curious to know if you guys have favorite characters or whatever. But yeah, if just on terms of my own sort of understanding and knowledge of the universe, I think that there is a kind of a limited range of characters that people are familiar with. So it's definitely a good point, Tommy, about yeah, the familiarity with all of the more obscure characters from the universe. Okay, sorry, I forgot to warn about that bright screen, but okay, now we're gonna go cat armor. Actually, hold on, I have a picture of his cat over here. Okay, and we did a little bit of our own design. But I think we were trying to imply that, like, this piece here was armor. And then his nose sticks out. That red. Oh boy. Okay. Well, again, it's just we're trying it out. And then that's armor there, and so is that. Yeah, that's I can already tell you that's too much. So that's cool. That's fine. Let's cut this out. Oh my god, done. We nailed it, guys. MS Paint style for the win. Okay. Flashbang incoming. Okay, you're good. I just had to fill, I had to retrieve that color and fill that. And maybe we can find a happy medium. Like, maybe it doesn't have to actually be that exact one. Maybe we can go a little bit brighter and a little bit more saturated with it. Yeah, okay. Okay, good. That I think will work. And then he's got a couple little gem bits that we can make more red. But him being all of that color, I think, is just going to be a little too distracting. Sorry, Battlecat, you're cool, but you're not number one in this image. I guess we can go for this buckle. I guess it's this whole thing, isn't it? Yep. Okay, cool. Where's my Skeletor? Okay, what's the next step here? It's like, it's funny because like we're creating our own art Bible, right? Like just referencing our own images. Okay. Hello and welcome in. Thanks for dropping by. Yeah, okay. I think it might be time for, let's see, where are we at with the time? We're doing good. We're like about an hour in here. So I think we can do Castle Grayskull. I'm gonna have to organize my layers a little bit because I think they're a little bit sloppy, which might bite us. Although the black shapes are there. So actually, you know what? No, I think we might be okay. So if I do, well, let's test it. Let's say we got Spooky Skulls Castle in the background. Is that going to cause issues? Let's see. Are we getting any weirdness? What's going on there? Yeah, see, this is where I need to figure out. Black shapes are on multiply. That's on 100%. Why is that? That's on multiply. Oh no, that's not what's causing it. Ah, okay. Okay, that makes sense. So this layer wants to be there we go. Oh wait, no, still gonna be a problem. So we're gonna need, okay, we're gonna have to fill a mat in behind him because we don't have that and we never made that. Actually, wait, did we make that? We've changed things though. Since we had that a while ago, we've like rotated and messed with stuff, so it's not gonna be good anymore. So we're gonna have to remake the mat. So we may have to hide He-Man for just a little bit here while we make Castle Grayskull. Hey, thanks, man. Well, thanks for dropping by, and hope you have a good night. Maybe we'll catch you next time. Right. Okay, so yeah, let's say goodbye to He-Man just briefly while we bring in Castle Grayskull here. I'm going to put all of his parts in a folder that we can hide. And let's get a dark gray color we can work with, because again, this is going to be a subtle thing in the background. And let me get my picture of Castle Grayskull up over here from the cartoon. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of liberties, but I want to get the main features, feeling feeling good. And I guess we need to be a little bit aware of like what's going to be visible when he's back on the canvas, right? So I think we need to have Castle Grayskull's evil skull up in that region there. Actually might be a little too short. Maybe we go real high with it. Okay, sure. Roar, spooky skulls. And then, of course, it's got to be made of stone. So it can't be too, like, I don't want to get too fancy with the organic shapes. It's got to be kind of chunky and almost like, you know, like the Minecraft version of a skull. Well, not that simple, but you get what I'm saying. So, like, all of this organic detail in here, I think we have to be just like a little bit simpler about it. I don't know. You know what? Maybe can someone tell me is actually I was just realized I might be totally wrong about this. Is the cat is the skull in Castle Grayskull a giant real skull, or is it a skull made out of stone? Like has it been like a, you know, like it's been fashioned out of like as a sculpture versus like an ancient giant creature whose skull was in it? Does anyone know? Do we have anybody, any MOTU experts in the crowd? Skull is always good. Yeah, I mean, I'm digging the skull. Like, definitely like any opportunities to paint and draw skulls. I just it occurred to me that I don't know if this is actually like a real skull or if this is like a sculpted skull. You know what? Let's just lean on like a skull that looks like a skull, and then people will just be mad when we're wrong about it. How about that? And then okay, so then this kind of opens up. Actually, some of this is going to get hidden, right? Yeah, that's all going to get hidden. But there's like kind of like a door, and then there's these like big towers to the sides. Where's our horizon line? Super low. Okay, so we want to make sure we have all these ellipses doing their upward slantiness. And I'm going to just render half this, right? Because then we can just mirror it. I know it's going to look cheap, but then I'm going to take it after it's mirrored and I'm going to like mess with it so it doesn't look mirrored anymore. And I do that all the time with stuff because it's just smart. It's just smart stuff. Yep. It has a big skull as an entry door. Yeah, the question was, is the skull like sculpted out of stone or rock, or is it like an ancient creature's giant bone skull that's been like, you know, like mounted into the facade of the structure? Which, you know, like if we were being not so stylized about this, that kind of detail might matter more. I think we can kind of get away with just kind of going for a skull motif here, but you know, if you were like sculpting this in 3D, that's information I feel like you would be really wanting to know. Tommy in here with the okay, thank you for providing the lore. So apparently the whole castle is just an illusion to hide the Hall of Wisdom. It's all fake, but it looks real. Okay, so we maybe we have a chance here to just kind of have a little bit of fun with it artistically because it sounds like it's this like magical sort of illusion thing. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I when I started doing this, I was like, you know what? I actually don't know what the story is there. The giant fangs in the skull. Ah, yes. Nice. Excellent call. It doesn't look like stone on the Wikipedia fan. Yeah. Yeah, and you got to wonder too, like if that's always been something vague, like no one's ever really defined it, and it's just kind of like artists just doing their own interpretations. And I guess there is like a glow from inside the eyes of the castle, right? So I think we should probably try to include that in there. It looks different in a few shots. Cartoons back then took some liberty, which caused a lot of issues sometimes when working on the Smurfs too. Nice. Yeah, I guess it would be the case with any of that stuff, right? Where it wasn't super consistent or was a little bit vague. And then you have like 80s kids like myself years later making fan art and stuff, and it's like we're looking for answers and they're not there. I think I might have killed a little bit of the vibe there. Again, we got to remember that like some of this stuff is just not going to be as visible. And it may be that this wants to just be smaller. Yeah, that's probably better for framing and stuff. Although the tangent, well, I guess it's not that bad. It's a lot darker in value, so I don't think it'll be distracting. It's effing distracting. Okay, we're gonna do some like tower guys. Maybe there's some little glowy castle windows going on. I start to like get rid of my loose sketch and try to make this feel a little more legit. The joy of suggested stone. Little I feel like it's like, something you learn in like fourth grade, trying to draw stuff primitively, and you're like, I can't, I don't want to draw every scale on that crocodile. What do I do? Oh, okay. I just draw a few scales here and there, and it gives you the idea that it's a creature with scales. I was curious if anybody remembers anything like that from their childhood, like these little mini art breakthroughs early on. Like one thing I remember I learned in elementary school, kind of on my own, I guess, but it was like how to make cracks in the ground look really convincing. So I remember I would just do some kind of zigzaggy shape, and then I would make another zigzaggy shape next to it. And then here was my big trick: was you find all the points and you just pull them straight down. And I felt like really, really proud of the fact that I could make my my cracks like this look really, really convincing. Silly memories of things. Remember to save your work, everybody, if you're working on something. Should I put another window over here? Probably. let's apply some more stonework. Try to imply a little bit of light hitting this front face more than the inner face. All right, now here's the ultra hack. We're going to take this and we're going to duplicate it down for another tier. And we'll check our He-Man to see what's going to show up. I kind of like that maybe it fades off into the background down here, that we don't get the full, you know, like we want to kind of be on the foreground at this point by the time we're down at this part of the image. So I think we'll just sort of fade it off as it goes to that section. You had a similar thing when you were much younger, discovered a thicker outline can make things stand against, stand apart more. Yeah. No, for sure. It's cool, like these little breakthroughs, and the fact that they keep happening over time, right? Like the journey never ends. There's always some new thing that you learn about. It just gets way more like nuanced and harder to describe to others, right? Because it's like this very like personalized breakthrough, where those early ones, they're like universals. But like, you know, if you're somebody who's been drawing a lot, doing it for years and stuff like that, the breakthroughs that you make, it's sometimes it's kind of like hard to like communicate those to others unless they're sort of at a similar place, because it's just some of that stuff may fly over people's heads. But that's sort of the art of teaching, right? Is like the ability to kind of communicate complex ideas to people who are not quite at that level yet. It's a fun challenge. All right, let's see what this looks like mirrored. Okay, yeah, that's not terrible, but like as usual, the eye sockets feel weird, so I'll skew those a little bit. His eye was a little too droopy. Okay, that's definitely better. We don't need these lines. You know, I'll work on this so it doesn't feel like it's just cheaply mirrored, but gives us a starting point anyway. And we might do is we might actually do a little perspective warp on it so that it feels like it's we get a little 3-point going on. And I want to make sure the axe doesn't get lost either. So yeah, there's a little bit of tinkering to be done there. Oh, and we didn't actually put the specular reflections on the armor. I forgot about that. We got excited about Castle Grayskull and we didn't get to that part. That's cool. So here's the perspective warp. Make the nose shape a little bit bigger. Make some of these shapes a little bit less shaded on this side. Okay, let's see. Now I'm going to take this. Let's actually see how dark the background was in that Skeletor image. Okay, so yeah, we did a little bit of a highlight on his on that kind of like skull gate behind him, kind of in the top center. So I think we'll do that here as well. And I'm going to posterize that as well so that we make sure we stay with our style. Oh, except that it won't. Okay, hold on. I have to do a little bit of fanciness to get that to work. I think I want that to be screen mode. Yes, and then posterize. Oh god, crunchy as hell. Sure. I'm gonna turn it down. So clip it to that. Oh, actually, there we go. Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted. And I think I want that here as well. So I'll just use a hard brush on that because I want that light to feel brighter on in the eye sockets. Hey, thanks, Patrick. Hope you have a good one, man. We'll see you next time. You had a student where they struggled to understand how to think in 3D when shading. It was really cool to finally see or understand, and suddenly every piece just 10 times cooler. Yeah. Yeah, when you see that like light bulb moment, when you see that switch flip. Um, yeah, I see it a lot with figure drawing where you can tell when students are just basically thinking about outlines. You know, it's just like I'm just looking at the edges of the body and I'm just drawing edges of the body. And it's still for them is just this like very two-dimensional shape, right? It's just a graphic shape. Versus when you can see them like wrapping the lines around the forms, like, okay, this leg is a cylinder in my head and my lines are showing that it's a cylinder, right? Like you can just see that in every mark that they're making when they're understanding that. And that's always really, really cool to see because that's a big breakthrough. Like until you have that breakthrough, you're going to be kind of stuck in amateur mode. So yeah, that's a cool story though. I love when I see people unlock new abilities like that. Specular highlights, right, on the armor. I don't want to forget about that. So let's make sure we get in there and do that. Hey, Arya, welcome in. How you doing? It's going good. We're just getting quite far with our He-Man fan piece here. We're adding some highlights to the armor. can see we got Battle Cat hiding and sneaking in the background there. We got some Castle Grayskull going on. It's overall been a pretty fun piece to work on. Yeah, the stream is going real great. I been having a lot of fun conversations with everybody tonight. I'm from California, over here, where there's a lot of game development stuff that goes on over here in this area. So I'm primarily from the video game industry. Yeah, it's if you're somebody who wants the weather to always be fairly consistent, then this place is definitely for you. Although it gets a little dry here sometimes. Is my only, if I had to be critical about it in some way, I'd say it gets dry, and then sometimes we get some wildfire issues going on. But aside from that, though, yeah, weather's usually quite great. Tommy, the extra cheesy clickbaity titles. Yeah, we try to avoid those around here. You have an offer you can share if you don't mind. Sure, yeah. Let us know what you got going on. Is it like a discount on like buying not kitchen knives or blenders or something, or a weight loss pill? You got an appointment soon? You got to go back and yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, thanks for popping by, and good luck with your appointments there. I'm questioning if I want to make his hair a tone, one of the red tones or not. It's tough, right? Because his hair is not red, it's blonde, and it's not that different in value from his skin. So I think it's probably not correct. But there's some part of my brain that's saying try it. So I don't know. We may just tinker with it a moment and just see how that looks. But I have a suspicion that it's probably correct as it is right now. This is where having a certain sort of stylistic approach is tricky, because we're not just doing a literal interpretation of everything, right? We're like having to tweak it a little bit to suit the look. And that, of course, means thinking about colors in a little bit of a simplistic way. But I appreciate that challenge. Like, if you guys see some of my other work on Instagram and ArtStation and all that stuff, you'll see that there are sort of like various looks that I play with. And each time I play with one of those looks, that's part of the enjoyment I get out of it, is to see if I can kind of work within that framework, right? Like, what is that puzzle I'm trying to solve? Graphic designer, customizing Twitch channels for gamers, designer stuff. Oh yeah. That's cool. I didn't know you were a graphic designer. Yeah, actually, I think I'm all set though on that stuff. I actually kind of like doing that stuff myself, 'cause being an artist, I'm sure you can imagine. But thanks though, I appreciate the offer. All right, get some more of those nice little juicy specular highlights on the metal. We need to actually, I need to take Castle Grayskull and erase. Actually, we'll mask it off just so that I can be a little non-destructive about it, because I'm weird about that stuff. But I'm gonna get rid of the Castle Grayskulls in any of the parts that are overlapping his body, which I think we avoided it for the most part because we were careful about how much of that we created on the top there. But yeah, I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. Okay, I think we're good. Let me get some water here. And just talking for an hour and a half straight, and then your throat needs a break. Okay. We are back. Oh right. So I think yeah, I wanted to make sure that the rim light didn't turn red for Battle Cat back here. So let's make sure that we keep that white. Yeah. Oh no, you might have missed it earlier. I was saying I kind of like doing some of that stuff myself because me being an artist, I actually like doing the design work myself. But I appreciate the offer though. Thank you. But yeah, I'm good though. Yeah, I think we're all set. And then I was gonna take this red. Actually, which red is it? This one here, and I'm gonna put that on the on some of the details of the armor as well for the cat. So there's those. Okay, have a good one. Okay, this is the time where we really start to scrutinize things that we want to tweak. I guess we didn't really finish all of the specular highlights on everything, so let's continue that. Or just make sure that it's a comprehensive pass. We didn't do it on the Battle Cat armor, which is not good. We want to make sure we get that in there. Little careful highlights. One of the things you can do, this is kind of a stylized approach, but if you've got a very flat surface and lighting is even on it, and you want to indicate some specularity, you can do like some diagonal stuff across. Can be a stylized way to approach that. You can also try and bring in a little bit of highlight to just the edges. This is like akin to like dry brushing. If you're familiar with like model painting, that can also be a way to kind of give a metallic look without while trying to deal with like flat surfaces. So there's a few ways. Those are just some of my favorite ones. Ooh, I guess that gem there wants to be red as well. We missed that one. That's cool. We'll get back to that. Thinking I could be a little louder with some of these highlights on this axe because I don't want it to get lost against the cat. I think that, yeah, that looks a little bit better. I think I'm gonna let me see with this gray skull back there. Let's use that gray skull instead. Perfect. I forgot we had that in there. That is too funny. No, that is not what I was trying to do. I was trying to see if it would be worth it to maybe like angle this at all. I think that might be kind of cool to just kind of give it a little bit of a twist. What a twist! And then maybe his boots get a little specularity, so they have like a shiny leather look and they come forward to the viewer a little bit more. Cool. Okay. And then just a little bit of bounce light on this guy here. This guy here. Oh, maybe we suggest a little bit on this guy over here, even though we can't see him. This guy here. Maybe this buckle needs a little bit. It is metal, but I'm being cautious to not have this stuff stand out too much. Maybe add like a little bit of like battle damage. Break up a little bit of that evenness. Create a little bit of visual interest. I mean, see, this is the stuff where, you know, this is like a 3-part one and we've been doing 2-part ones. And when you do a 3-part one, you get that little extra time. And I feel like you can kind of micromanage some of the stuff that you would otherwise maybe just, you might be rushing through that a little bit. It's kind of fun to be able to spend some time and put in some of these things. The other thing we did, I remember on Skeletor, was we added a little bit of like splatter effect in some areas. And I'd like to try that again. It adds just a little bit of fun texture and a little energy to the piece. So let's see. I think it's here. Obviously, you're going to want to do this on another layer. And we'll have to be kind of clever about where we put this, but I think it makes sense. On some of these kind of flatter surfaces, bigger surfaces, certainly some of the armor makes sense. On his boots, maybe he's got some dirt on his boots. And then maybe we do the inverse of that. We do a little bit of a white splatter off the lightning here, like it's like some sparks hitting the lightning. Yeah, that's pretty fun. Maybe we'll put a little bit of grunge on Castle Grayskull back there. Actually, I should probably shade this a little bit more too, because I don't want it to look like it's perfectly mirrored. I think it still feels a little too much. It's too much symmetry going on there. That's the wrong gray value. All right. We got to sample it. Sorry, folks. Oh, actually, why is that? Oh, because it's 66%. That's why we were not getting the right value. I was sampling the... Okay. Now we're good. We're good now. So this is like if you're trying to make sure that it doesn't feel mirrored. Obviously, you want to pay attention to the center line, and I got distracted, and we missed that opportunity. I think we can definitely put a little more light on the left side, because that's where the sword is. So you're kind of already feeling like there's more light on this side of the image in general. This is one of those puzzles, like, how much can we get away with not showing in there that you'll still read it as skull? And I feel like it's actually quite a bit. Okay, then I wanted to try that tone on the hair. Now, it's obviously really strong, but I'm just doing it so I can see what I'm doing, and then I'm going to turn it way, way down. Oh, and we don't want it to have affect the rim light. Right, so let's actually, yeah, let's do that, and then I'm going to turn it way down. Okay, yeah, I actually like that. Just like a very, very subtle value change there for the hair versus the skin. I think that kind of helps sell that effect. And then the red on the cat keeps him in the background. Let's turn this down just slightly. Actually, what? It's interesting. I actually kind of like it. I like the shadows pretty heavy. That might be a little bit much. Let's pull it back just slightly. This is one of those things where I'm looking at it on another monitor as well, just because like every monitor is a little bit different. Now you should be thinking about the values in your piece relative to each other. So if it like reads on one monitor, it should technically read on another one pretty well. But when you're dealing with things that are on an extreme end of visible or non-visible, the monitor calibration starts to become not an issue, but like it starts to be part of that equation a little bit more. And here we are dealing with that because we are dealing with extreme regions of shadow, right? So sort of managing that, but I sort of like the depth that it creates there, where we have these big pockets of shadow in this image, and I like that the cat kind of fades into the background. We just get a couple little moments to kind of appreciate him back there. But I think that we might be losing a little bit of the rim light too much on the underside of the arm. So let's just hatch that in ever so carefully. I'm just erasing some of the shadow area with a hard brush, but just very selectively, so that we're not creating any soft gradients. I want you to read that information there. Yep. Looking at my picture over here of He-Man, trying to make sure I'm not like losing the vibes he's got, his facial vibes. Let's go a little heavier with the rim light on his hair, so we can make sure you're looking up. Oh, that might be a little much. But I want to make sure you're like looking up there at him. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna merge it all together, and I'm gonna flip it, and then we're gonna just check to see if anything looks a little weird, and we can use liquify to kind of adjust things, right, as a final sort of check, or just like things that are like distracting that maybe we didn't catch before. Sometimes the way your eye reads light and shadow shapes just changes a little bit when you flip it, right? And that I think is reason alone to check the image from the reverse. I'm going to black out a lot of this over here. I can leave the window alone. I just think there's too much information over here. We don't need all that. You know, it's interesting, but I think this hand is reading a little bit small. Actually, I'm going to kind of scale this whole thing up here. Okay. I think I'd like this arm to be a little bit more, this bicep to be a little bit more flexed looking. A little stronger silhouette as well. I'd probably do that to the forearm as well, just give a little more volume to the forearm muscle there. And we might even be able to do that with the leg muscles as well. They're reading a little bit thin, so let's just beef them up a little bit. So, you know, I would encourage you guys to give yourself enough time at the end of a piece to do this sort of stuff, right? Where you're really just finessing and tinkering. I know that sometimes deadlines and whatnot limit your ability to do this sort of tinkering, but, you know, if you do have that time, it's really nice, right? Because you're not as worried that you're like totally missing the mark on something, or, you know, leaving an edit on the table that would have been really, really helpful. So, like, I don't know why this tail is so bright down here. Cut that back a little bit. You can do something like assess the ellipse of the shield, right? Like, is that ellipse a little bit off? Like, can we maybe pull it out just a little bit here? And yeah, I'm warping the castle in the background, but that's so hard to read it anyway that it's better to get the shield feeling good because it's readable in the foreground there. Assessing like the cat's face, right? Like, is there anything like symmetry wise that looks a little bit weird when we mirror it? I think it actually holds up pretty good, especially considering that I don't draw animals as much as humans. I feel like that's actually pretty decent effort there. Yeah, okay. I really enjoyed that we had some time at the end there where I didn't feel like I was rushing to get the final bits in there. I'm gonna do one last thing. I'm gonna see about maybe multiplying a slight value onto the loincloth here, or the fur around the waist, kind of like we did with the hair, just to just help it separate from the skin a little bit. Yeah, okay. Cool. So as I was saying, I really enjoyed that we had some time to kind of tinker and fiddle with everything, like really kind of get into the details and tinker with stuff a lot. I really enjoy that. So we did take a little longer with this one than the other ones, but we were also experimenting a bit more with the process. So if you go back and you watch the first two episodes, you'll see that we did a few things this time that we did differently than we did with Skeletor and Evil Lyn. And I think we learned things along the way by doing that. I suspect that I'll stick with this method. I feel like we just had a little bit more control over things despite it taking longer. You know, hopefully you guys are enjoying it, even though the paintings may take a little bit longer. I think, you know, we're here for learning together, getting creative together, and seeing what we can come up with. So I don't feel like I'm under this pressure to do things super fast. And these aren't taking forever, right? Like if we were to add up the number of hours spent on this between the 3 streams, this is a 6 hour piece roughly, right? And I think that that's reasonable, right? Like if someone were to ask you, you know, can you make this for me, and you only had a day to do it, you could get that done. And I think that that's pretty good. It's a decent pace for something like this. And it's a style that I don't always do, right? It's a kind of a unique look. And as we do more of it, we might get a little bit faster at it. We don't know, but that's generally how things go, right? So it was a fun one. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. So we'll be posting this up on various socials. Yeah, remember to like and subscribe. I really appreciate all of your support. And if you are an artist and you're looking to improve your drawing skills, remember that I do have a free drawing guide that you can get by subscribing to the channel. It'll be linked in the video's description. Okay, so good luck with your creative endeavors, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.